Hey y'all, welcome back. Today I'm going to introduce you to a new series on my YouTube channel where I document my start of the year fat loss phase. If you're new here, hi, my name is Chris, aka Hime. I usually make videos about productivity and stationery, but this year I want to make some content centered around sustainable fitness. I'm a lifting girly in my late 30s who's made fitness a lifestyle change for over 10 years, not a certified personal trainer or nutrition coach or dietitian, but I'm all about moderate and maintainable habit changes for reaching fitness, physique, and strength goals. If that sounds interesting to you, I hope you'll stick around for the rest of this video and for the entire series. And although I'll be sharing my process as well as tips and tricks for making fat loss as simple and straightforward as possible, take what resonates with you and leave behind anything that doesn't, because this series isn't meant to be the one truth about how to lose weight. Anyways, let's just get into the video.
Choose your character.
I am 5'7", 170 centimeters, 36 years old, half Korean, half Caucasian. This morning I weighed in at 154.9 pounds. That's 70.26 kilograms. The circumference of my bust is 40.5 inches, about 103 centimeters. The circumference of my waist is 30.5 inches, 77.5 centimeters. The circumference around the widest part of my hips is 40 inches, 101.5 centimeters. If I had to give a rough visual estimate of my body fat percentage, I would probably estimate myself to be around 22%, somewhere in between 20 and 25% body fat currently. Now I'm going to set my calorie and macro goals for this fat loss phase using MacroFactor. This strategy, which is 1871 calories, 138 protein, 62 fat, and 188 carbs a day, is based on a maintenance goal to stay around 152 pounds. Obviously, I'm not 152 pounds right now because I wasn't 100% accurate with my macro and calorie logging because of the holidays, which is totally okay. I kind of expect that to happen around this time of year, but I'm going to set a new goal for my fat loss phase. So went to hit the new goal button and we're gonna set a new goal. We're gonna go lose weight next. And then my target weight is going to be 142 pounds. And I want to hit that. That would be Monday, May 5th. It's giving me, and when I adjusted this weight target, the date changed. And when I adjusted the target goal rate, the date and the calorie budget changed. With this goal in mind, it's telling me my initial daily budget is going to be about 1,600 calories a day, and I'm aiming to lose about 0.8 pounds a week, 3.2 pounds a month, and it's a pretty moderate goal for a 16-ish week fat loss phase. So here's the goal summary. I'm setting the new program, and it has 3 options for the program style. You could do coached, which the app will design a calorie and macro program based on the goal and preferences. Collaborative, where you set your own macro targets and it'll adjust the calorie budget. Or manual, where you can set your own macro and calorie targets. I'm going to use the coached option because why not? I paid for this app, so I'm going to let it do the work for me. So I'm going to hit next. So it also gives you a preferred diet. I'm going to choose the balanced option and we'll see what it says. It's asking what calorie floor do you prefer? They have a standard floor and a low floor. So the standard floor, your recommendations will never go below 1,230 calories, even if your TDEE adjusts over time. The low floor is your recommendations will never go below 820 calories. And it says proceed with caution. I'm going to use the standard floor. What training program will you do during this program? For me, I will only be lifting to begin with. This might change over time depending on how I feel. I really don't want to be super restricted on calories, and to facilitate that, I might start adding in more activity or some cardio, but right now I'm going to focus on restricting my diet and lifting only. So we're going to go with that option. And how would you like to distribute your calories throughout the week? I prefer to distribute evenly rather than shifting based on specific days or specific workout days. What is your preferred protein intake? I'm going to choose high, which is the high end of the optimal range, but I often find that I will put myself in the extra high recommended intake just by the way that I eat. So, which is not a bad thing, but just to allow myself to have like more carbs and fats, we're gonna pick the high end. And then it's gonna set me a new program. My macro program for right now is 1,588 calories a day, 142 grams of protein, 52 grams of fat, and 135 carbs per day. You can see here, I'll zoom in a little bit. This is what it's telling me for now. And like I said, this will update week to week, and I'll check in with you on that when I update it next Monday. So I'm gonna hit done, and we'll get started on that new goal. So this is my strategy now, the one that we just talked about. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with that. I have done fat loss phases before, and I know that I can handle 1,588 calories a day without too much trouble. I'm also used to eating high protein meals, so that's not really going to be an issue with me. Pretty happy with that. I was honestly expecting less based on my energy expenditure lately. Hey, welcome to my home gym, if you haven't seen it before. Today is Tuesday, the 7th, and it is the first workout of this fat loss phase. So during this time, you're probably gonna see some footage of me working out. Today is an upper body day for me where I'm hitting shoulders, chest, back, and arms. And I'm gonna talk to you a little bit about the strategy that I'm using at the beginning of this fat loss phase when it comes to my workouts. And then I also wanted to just like show you really quickly the gym. If you haven't seen it before, I have a number of benches scattered around, as well as this is a leg extension machine, a leg curl machine, hip adduction and abduction, it does both, leg press, barbell for deadlifts, RDLs, that kind of stuff on the floor, and then a squat rack that I use for benching, squatting, overhead press, stuff like that. And then back here in the corner, we have a cable machine where you can put your handles at the bottom, at the top, on the outside or the inside. And then a little stand over here for our selection of dumbbells. So home gym works pretty well for us. And if you are interested in like a full workout, I have a video coming up where I plan to show you like what my entire week of workouts looks like. So don't even worry about that. I'm not gonna gatekeep my workout routine from you, but yeah, just wanted to talk to you about how I'm thinking about lifting in the grand scheme of my fat loss strategy. So because I'm using MacroFactor for my calorie and macro intake, it told me that I should be able to lose fat at a little less than 1,600 calories, continuing to do exactly what I have been doing. So right now, I do not plan on doing any cardio. I do not plan on specifically trying to increase my steps or my overall activity throughout the day. And I also do not intend to change my workout routine at all. Right now, I am doing a 5-day workout split. Monday off, upper, lower, shoulders and arms. Off on Friday, Saturday, Sunday is upper, lower again. So I've been doing that workout for about a week. I think I've mentioned it in my planner videos, maybe not specifically in this video, but during December, I mostly didn't work out, only in the very end of the month. So I did about a week of what I would call a reload, where I did my workout program, but I took it pretty easy on myself and didn't do my normal heavier weights. But this week I'm officially getting back into it, normal intensity on my workouts. So I'm gonna see how this goes, sticking with my regular workouts, regular intensity. I'm gonna adjust the weights depending on my fatigue levels and my strength levels, and then see how my strategy from MacroFactor evolves over time. It gets to the point where I am feeling really, really depleted by the amount of calories I'm eating a day. I will probably revise my strategy to include a little bit more activity so that I can have a little more calories. So whenever you're in a calorie deficit, you're always gonna feel fatigued at some point, you know. And it's not just about the amount of food, it's just that you are intaking less calories than you're burning, and that's what facilitates the fat loss. But if I get into the point where it's so few calories that I'm constantly feeling like really, really hungry, like stomach hungry, like I'm not full, like I'm not eating enough food to like feel satiated, then that's when I'm gonna change my plan. But for now, we're sticking with what we're doing. So like I said, just to recap, 5 days a week of lifting. Every workout is about an hour long, sometimes it's less. I'm keeping the intensity normal for me, which I would say is relatively high. I'm not trying to take a bunch of rest between sets, but at the same time, I'm not doing any super heavy lifting right now. I'm not increasing my steps. I'm not doing any cardio, and I'm not specifically trying to increase my overall activity to try to make myself lose weight faster, because this is like a very moderate and strategic fat loss phase, and I don't want to blast myself right from the get-go. We're taking it slow, we're taking it easy. This is sustainable weight loss that I'm hoping to keep off for the rest of the year. Okay, let's get into this workout. So I just finished my lateral shoulder raises with the cable machine, and next up I'm gonna be doing some barbell bench. One difficulty I foresee in this fat loss phase is that as I become more fatigued because of the calorie deficit, a lot of my exercises are going to become more difficult. Of course, I'll have less energy reserves, etc. So as time goes on, I'll probably be removing a lot of the barbell exercises that I have in the workout. So things like bench press, deadlift, RDL, stuff like that. That's a really big compound movement that uses a lot of your body. Like, they're considered more full body exercises. So right now I'm feeling good. It's the start of the fat loss phase, so I'm not too depleted, and I enjoy doing barbell bench, so I'm gonna continue to do that. But later on in the fat loss phase, I foresee myself switching that barbell exercise to maybe a dumbbell chest press, or maybe a cable pec fly, something like that. Just, you know, so I'm still working the muscles, still trying to preserve my muscle mass, and still trying to keep my strength, but doing something that's a little bit less fatiguing and a little bit less of a full body exercise. So that's a little bit of an insight as to some of the problems that may arise as this fat loss phase continues. Yeah, so right now the workouts are feeling pretty good. I obviously was not on a fat loss phase until basically yesterday, so I was eating around my maintenance calories. I actually just did on bench more than I did last week, which I'm pretty happy about, but I don't really expect that weight to go anywhere after this. So I'm sure I'll check back in with you guys next week, but yeah, I just wanted to say that like right now I'm feeling pretty good about the workouts. I have enough energy. I'm not using pre-workout or taking an extraneous amount of caffeine or anything like that. And I still feel like I can get my workouts in relatively quickly and not feel completely demolished. So good on that front, but I do expect that as time goes on, I'm not gonna feel as great about the workouts, and it is what it is. Another foreseeable struggle with being in a calorie deficit for a prolonged period of time, even if it's a moderate calorie deficit, is accumulated mental fatigue. You know, your body is fatigued, and just over time, like thinking about all your food, your workouts, your real life, I don't know if you have kids, your work, all that stuff, it really like builds up over time. So I try to look for ways that I can set myself up for success. And that's also one of the reasons why I decided to use MacroFactor to tell me exactly what my calorie and macros should be for the week. It's because that's one less thing that I have to worry about. As somebody that's relatively knowledgeable about fitness and nutrition, although I'm no longer certified, I was at one point a certified personal trainer, I could calculate my own calorie and macro intake, but letting MacroFactor handle that for me is just one thing off of my checklist. It's one thing that I don't have to worry about, and it's one thing that's not causing me accumulated mental fatigue. So obviously I do have to still worry about the foods that I'm actually eating, but I don't have to sit down and like think about how many protein, how much fat, how many carbs, how many calories, like week to week. But another way that I have set myself up for success on the mental fatigue front, so I have basically set up a Google spreadsheet of my workouts for the entire 16-week fat loss phase. And that includes the exercises, the sets and the reps, and then the only thing I'm really updating week to week is the weight. I even have in here the exact date that it's supposed to be, and that is like for every week it's different, as you can see, like 3/9. I don't necessarily think that you need to have an entire 16-week program set up, but think about having a plan for when you go to the gym. And this is not just for a specific fat loss phase, just in general. Have a plan when you go to the gym, and then when you get there, you'll feel a lot less overwhelmed because you know exactly what you need to do. Okay, so now I want to talk to you a little bit about my strategy when it comes to calories, macros, and food in general. So we already took a look at what MacroFactor gave me for my calorie intake as well as my macros. So 1588 calories a day, and I'm prioritizing 142 grams of protein per day. It's pretty difficult, I would say, even for somebody like me that's pretty experienced, to hit my designated macros like really spot on. So, in order to save myself a little bit of like mental stress, I usually do my best to first prioritize calories. I want to get to 1588 calories a day or a little under. I would prefer not to go over, and I also don't want to be massively under. And then after that, I'm going to be prioritizing my protein intake. So I want to make sure I'm getting at least 142 grams of protein a day. Oftentimes I'll go over that just because of my eating habits at this point. And then after that, on the scale of priorities would be fats and then carbs. So fats are really important. You can't just go completely no fat in your diet. It's really bad for your hormones and overall health. So I'm gonna go calories overall, prioritize protein, then fat, and then carb intake. In general, for this entire fat loss phase, I will be sticking with the calories and macros that MacroFactor is giving me. And I have sort of like a daily strategy when it comes to eating so that I can more easily hit those goals. And I will say, like, right off the bat, I have like a really like routine life that I don't deviate from all that much. Like, I might have like an appointment or like a get together every once in a while, but for the most part, it's just like my day job or doing my own projects and then cleaning, workout, chill for the rest of the night, doing whatever. That's one thing that makes it relatively easy for me to like stick to this strategy. I also have complete control over everything that I eat. I am the primary food preparer in the household, and I'm also the person that buys all the groceries. So I have absolute say in basically everything that I eat in this household. And then I also want to mention that I do work from home, so I can easily like step away for like 5-10 minutes during the day, prepare myself like a really quick lunch, and then I also don't spend a lot of time like commuting back and forth or anything like that. I'm really trying to keep the volume of food high, so the calories low relatively, but the volume high, because you're gonna feel tired and a little rundown over time being on a calorie deficit, but I don't want to add feeling hungry on top of that. I'm not necessarily trying to eat healthy. I think that's like kind of a very vague term, but I am trying to eat nutritiously, one, because it's gonna make me feel better, and then two, I'm trying to prioritize foods that are high volume and low calorie, which tends to be like vegetables. So I end up eating just like a lot of vegetables because that's what fits into my macros, but it also is really filling. My general strategy day to day is going to be first thing in the morning, coffee. And you saw my coffee concoction. It's like not great, but it's basically instant coffee, collagen supplement, and creatine. So, I mean, in addition to like sugar substitutes and stuff like that. And then also about 100 grams of Fairlife fat-free milk, which is, I think it's ultra filtered so that it typically has more protein than regular milk. So overall, that kind of comes out to about 120 calories and 25 grams of protein, which is awesome. And then the next thing I plan to consume throughout the day, I would say around 11 a.m., I want to have one protein shake. Right now, I'm drinking the Ghost whey protein in Cinnabon. It's pretty good. In general, I like Ghost protein. I think the flavors are really good, and they dissolve quite well in water using a shaker bottle. And I've tried a couple different flavors, and they're all pretty good. And then for lunch, I'm kind of pushing the time of my lunch back a little bit because I want to have some fuel for my workouts, and I typically work out around 5 o'clock p.m. So lunchtime for me is like between 2 and 3, and it's gonna be like kind of a smaller lunch, but actually like quite filling, and it usually ends up being like some kind of protein, whether it's chicken, ground beef, maybe shrimp, something like that, with a salad of some sort, which might just end up being like cut up cucumbers and tomatoes. It might be like a cabbage coleslaw situation. But yeah, basically straight protein and vegetables with a low calorie dressing. I'm trying to avoid excessive oil, so I wouldn't be adding oil into that. But you know, meat tends to have an amount of fat on it. So usually that comes out to about 500 calories or less. And then I'm reserving about 800 calories, sometimes a little more, sometimes it's a little less. And then any leftover calories at the end of the day, I'll have myself a little snack. And I'll also say typically we eat around 8 o'clock at night. So I start cooking around 7:30, and we eat around 8 o'clock at night. And the dinner usually keeps me full for the rest of the day until the next morning. In every meal that I eat, anytime that I'm putting something in my mouth, I try to get at least 25 grams of protein. And then that helps to kind of like distribute my protein intake throughout the day. Just for like satiety and balance, I try to get protein every time I eat something. I also want to mention that anytime I'm having food or my coffee or a protein shake, I'm trying to drink one of my big glasses of water at the same time. A glass like this big, and I don't remember exactly how many ounces this is. I'm assuming it's at least 20. Even if I only drink one full glass of water with each of my meals, that's still like 80 ounces of water, which is like really good. But I would say that I probably get more than that throughout the day. But keeping my water intake pretty high is also important to me. Not only is it like really good for my skin, I notice a really big difference in my overall skin texture, but it also helps keep me full. You know, if I'm not thirsty, my body won't mistake it for hunger. I don't know if that made sense. That's my overall eating strategy, but other things that I wanted to mention is that I'm only allowing myself 3 diet drinks a day, like diet soda, and other like diet drinks. I get some drinks from Costco that are like 0 calories. I count those as well. I'm only having caffeine right now 2 times a day. My coffee in the morning, and around 4 o'clock in the afternoon, I'm having either like a diet soda with caffeine, or I'm having a like tea or like a matcha latte, something like that. So I'm guessing that over time throughout this fat loss phase, I'm gonna have to ramp up my caffeine intake just to like keep myself going. So right now I'm trying to keep it like pretty low. This is like my normal caffeine intake, even when I'm not in a fat loss phase. And I also wanted to mention that I take quite a few daily vitamins and supplements, and I do not factor that into any of my calorie tracking. I take fish oils, vitamin E, vitamin D, CoQ10. Anyways, I take about a handful of pills a day, and I'm sure that they amount to some calories, but I take them every day, so I just kind of like factor that in. So I don't log those. In the grand scheme of things, it's probably like 50 to 100 calories because like all those fish oils and stuff. this is like a strategy that really works for me, and I kind of like stick to this even when I'm not in a fat loss phase, so it's not a huge deviation from my normal everyday habits. If you're watching this video looking for like tips or advice, I would tell you that like the biggest thing for me when it comes to having a successful like fat loss phase is planning. So like I have my workout strategy in the books already. I have my eating strategy, and you just have to come up with something that works for you and your lifestyle. Going into like a fat loss phase and just like cutting your calories, going into a deficit, maybe not necessarily tracking, going on an elimination diet or something like that. There's not anything inherently wrong with that, but a lot of times like drastically changing a bunch of habits at the same time can be really overwhelming and really hard to stick to, as on top of just like being tired and mentally fatigued from being in a calorie deficit. So I hope that this made sense to you. Let me know if you have any questions and I can like try to explain further. Hey y'all, today is Monday, January 13th, the start of the second week of my fat loss phase. Let's check in with MacroFactor. Is it doing it? Oh. That was silly of me. Okay, go to program update. Yeah, so it wants to lower me by about 70 calories to 1520 per day, 142 grams of protein, 50 grams of fat, and 123 grams of carbs. I am gonna accept these program changes. That is pretty low for me, but this week at 1588, I really didn't have any trouble reaching my protein goals, and I wasn't feeling especially tired or especially hungry throughout the week. So we'll give this a try and see how it goes. I would prefer not to get lower than 1500 calories a day. So depending on what my macros are next week, we might have to start adding in more activity, probably in the form of steps rather than dedicated like cardio, like running. That was the update for today. I'm not gonna do a physique check-in until the end of the week because I don't think there's gonna be much of a visual difference, but hopefully by that time there will be. Okay, see you later. Okay, back in the kitchen, and I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about my food tracking, intake, dieting strategy. So I kind of broke down for you how I'm structuring my days, but I also want to talk a little bit more about macros and if it fits your macros, commonly referred to as IIFYM, if it fits your macros. So this is kind of the tracking and dieting strategy that I use, and it has worked for me well in the past. What it is it's basically you have your calorie intake for the day and you have your macros for the day, proteins, fats, and carbs, and you basically puzzle piece your food intake around that. Rather than going on an elimination diet, you are specifically trying to reach certain goals. I like this way of eating because when I'm in a fat loss phase, it basically allows me to eat as much as possible while still losing weight, rather than going on something like an elimination diet where I'm cutting out entire food groups. I can basically eat whatever I want in moderation. I don't track my calories all year round. It can be quite mentally taxing. It just like over time it starts to wear on you. So I don't like to track my macros all year round, typically only when I have a very specific goal in mind, like fat loss. I try to be as accurate as possible without being obsessive about it. So I do weigh most of my foods, but in some cases it's not really worth it to think about the minutia about it. So for example, like whey protein, it says 1 scoop is this amount of calories. I just go with the scoop and I don't measure exactly to the gram my protein powder. I also will eat out every once in a while, even when I'm in a fat loss phase, and I'll just use the nutrition information off of the website, even though there's gonna be some variation based on the restaurant and the person preparing the food, stuff like that. So accurate, but not obsessive. And then for me, I prefer to measure all the raw ingredients that go into my food when I'm cooking for myself. And that includes fruits, vegetables, meats, stuff like that. Even like seasonings, if it's a seasoning that has an amount of calorie on the nutrition label, I measure that separately rather than cooked, if that makes sense. So it doesn't necessarily matter what you choose, like if you want to do cooked protein versus raw protein, cooked rice versus uncooked rice. You just have to stay consistent all the way across the board. When I am deciding what I want to eat, I do my best to eat foods that I like, foods that taste good, that suit my palate, that make me feel good, but I'm specifically trying to make lower calorie substitutions. So going with 2% cheese, fat-free milk, rather than whole fat dairy products. When I make a salad, I'll gravitate more towards vinaigrettes or making my own vinaigrette with less oil or no oil. I'm not really cooking with olive oil or avocado oil. I'm using like a pan spray and just giving it like a quick spritz so that I'm not accumulating a lot of extra calories from just cooking the foods. Honestly, like when it comes to eating lower calorie, that is my like biggest tip, is like look for substitutions for the foods that you already like. Also, things that have more protein that help you reach your protein goals. So like protein enriched pasta has been a big one for me right now. Switching to Fairlife milk that has more protein than regular milk. Anyways, I hope all that made sense. That's kind of like add-on to what I was talking about earlier with my daily eating strategy. So now what I want to do is show you how I'm logging some of the foods that I eat. Okay, first thing, when it comes to logging and tracking your food is the equipment you're gonna need. And basically it's just your phone and an app. I'm using MacroFactor, but there are tons of other calorie and food tracking apps. I have also used MyFitnessPal in the past for a very long time, and it was totally fine. I mean, I would suggest if tracking your intake is something you're interested in, try out a few different ones. A lot of them, if they're paid apps, they have free trials or they have free versions, and just see what works best for you. The other thing you're gonna need is a food scale. This is a really simple, cheap food scale that I got off of Amazon. I think it was less than $15. And that's basically it outside of the food that you are tracking. The simple and easiest way to log an item in your tracking app is to use the scanning feature. A lot of times this is a paid feature, but it's pretty nice to have. When I was using MyFitnessPal and I wasn't paying for it, I got by, but I didn't love it. So for MacroFactor, basically you can hit this plus button down here and scan with the barcode. Or from my menu, you can just hit this little barcode button here at the bottom. The scanning thing comes up and you scan an item. So this here is a Fairlife protein shake, and I'm just gonna do a quick glance and make sure that the information in the listing is correct. So 150 calories, 30 grams of protein, let's see, fat, 2.5 grams of fat, and 4 carbs, and that looks good to me. So they do have a couple different options if you weren't planning to drink the entire shake, so you can measure it in grams, ounces, or pounds, but I'm gonna simply drink the entire bottle, so that's easy enough. And then I'll add that, and then the way MacroFactor works, which I find it slightly complicated, is it kind of breaks stuff down by meal, so you can add multiple things at one time, but I'm just gonna drink this right now. So we're gonna go with that and just hit the log food, and it adds it to my food log for the day. Another way that you can find items in MacroFactor is simply by searching. This is a little less straightforward than scanning something because sometimes you just have to trust that the items you're looking for are correctly logged, unless you want to log things like bananas and oranges yourself. So this is an example of something that I search for and use all the time in my daily eating habits. So it's tomatoes, basically. something that I eat a lot of, I buy a lot of. This is like a big staple in my own diet. So what I'm just gonna do is search for the word tomato in the search bar. You can see that I already have some in my history, but if you haven't used MacroFactor before, you would probably come down to some of the common logs. I just kind of like browse and see what seems reasonable to me. And I've been using this first one here, the tomato raw, which includes all different types of tomatoes. And I like this one because it allows me to track in grams as well as different sorts of tomatoes. Weighing the item is the most accurate, but you know, if you're in a pinch and you just want to log 3 cherry tomatoes or 1 large tomato, this is kind of a nice option for that. So what I would do basically is turn on my scale with the tare button. So other scales may be different, and you want to make sure that the number here with nothing on it is at 0. So you see it's for some reason logging 1. I'm gonna tare it again. And then I would simply weigh my tomato. It comes out to 139, so I'm gonna just input it like that, 139 grams of tomato, which comes out to about 25 calories, and then I would add and log that food. In the scale that I'm using, it has a bunch of different units of measurement, so I usually keep it on grams, but it also has pounds, pounds and ounces, ounces, and milliliters, which is pretty convenient. Generally speaking, I use grams because it's a small form of measurement that's pretty easy to accurately measure with. Another way that you might track something by using the search feature is, I would say guesstimating cooked foods. So you might be in a situation where you're at a get-together, or you're at a party, or maybe you just don't prepare the foods in your house. You might want to try to log that food. Hopefully this isn't something that happens on a regular basis when you're trying to lose fat, but you might want to try to log that food as best you can, just to have as accurate and consistent readings as possible with your tracking app. So right here, I have a thing. It is some marinated Chinese mushrooms that my mother-in-law made for me. Now, I have no idea how she cooked it. I really don't know most of the ingredients in this, but I'm gonna eat some of it, and I wanna log something in MacroFactor. So I can see that it has like big shiitake mushrooms, and there's like some kind of sauce. I'm guessing it's soy-based, but I can also see that there is like some oil on the top, which is not the greatest for me, but we're gonna just eat a small amount. In this situation, I'm just gonna try to guesstimate as accurately as possible what is in this item. So I'm gonna have a small bowl to put it in, and you can see that there's a weight on here, and I'm gonna hit the tare button again, and basically that zeroes it out. So, I mean, I'm not sure if like people know that about scales. I worked in a deli department of a grocery store for a very long time, so that's kind of like intuitive for me, but this way you can put your dish right on the scale and just only weigh the stuff that you're adding to it. So I'm just gonna try to get 1 single mushroom on here, and let's see how much it weighs. 31 grams, let's go 2 mushrooms. 69 grams, okay. 69 grams of marinated mushrooms. What I'm gonna try to do is just come up with what I think might be in this dish. So I'll go back to the search function. I'll look up shiitake mushrooms. And let's see, shiitake mushrooms cooked with salt, shiitake mushrooms cooked, shiitake mushrooms raw, shiitake mushrooms stir-fried. I think I want to use, let's use the stir-fried. We're gonna log it in grams, so 69 grams of that. And then I'm also gonna just add in some other seasonings in here. We're gonna say maybe a tablespoon of soy sauce, and we're also gonna say maybe sesame oil. We're gonna say maybe, I hate it, but we're gonna say maybe 1 teaspoon of oil, just to be on the safe side. You know, I would rather overestimate than underestimate. So then you can see when we log that food, Oh, let me move these other two things. 77, we're estimating 77 calories for these 2 mushrooms. And personally, with my knowledge of food and nutrition in general, that's probably pretty good. I might be overestimating on the oil, but like I said, I'd rather be safe than sorry. So we're gonna go with that. And I feel good about that. Like I said earlier, we are going for accurate, but not obsessive. I wanna log something to account for this, but I don't wanna get too in the weeds about it because that's really taxing on my mental health. So let's go with that. And I feel comfortable. These, I mean, I'm pretty skilled with chopsticks, but these are kind of hard to eat. Mushrooms are actually quite low calorie. It's something that I like to add to a lot of my foods, especially, I mean, in general, I like mushrooms, but specifically when I'm in a fat loss phase and a calorie deficit, they add a lot of volume to food, but they don't have a ton of calories. Like, I think I bought a pack of mushrooms from Costco, like a multi-pack with different kinds, and it was like 22 calories for 100 grams of mushrooms, and you'd be surprised how many mushrooms is in 100 grams of mushrooms. Last category of adding items to your tracking app is having to input the entire item in yourself. Although I do really like MacroFactor, I will say one of the downsides of using it is that it is a newer app. So the database of foods is not the biggest, and it's also not the most accurate. So right now I'm gonna go over how you can add an entirely new food, how you can do it like the long form way, how you can do it the quick way, and then how you can fix an item if you found it in the system, but it's not correct. I actually couldn't find any items in my pantry that have not already been added to MacroFactor. So basically I'm gonna like make it up. But normally what you would do if you're scanning an item, you would scan it with the barcode and see if it comes up or not. And if it doesn't come up, it will prompt you to add the new item. But since I couldn't find one, what I'm gonna do is come down here to add a new food. And easy and simple enough, you basically just add all the relevant information, the description or the name of the food and the brand. Okay, it's not gonna, I'm just gonna put some BS in. You can change the icon if you want. Describe the serving size, and you can look on your nutrition label for that. In the case of this, I would go with 110 grams is the serving size. So log that in, 110 serving size. I like to just say serving instead of portion. And then you would go next, and that's when you would add in all of the information. At the very least, you want to make sure you get in the calories, the fats, the carbs, and the protein, but for yourself, you might want to also add in some of this other information if it's available. I typically will add everything in this like first section here with the saturated fat, the trans fat, the cholesterol, the sodium, fibers, and sugars added, but I typically don't do the vitamins and minerals and stuff like that. And then once you've created your item, you've added in all the information, you just hit this button down here that says create if you're just adding it into the system, or create and add if you want to add it to your food log for the day. And it's basically as simple as that when it comes to scanning an item and then logging all the information about it. Another way that you can quickly add something to the system for yourself is with the quick add feature. So it's this yellow button right here. You might want to use this in a situation where it's an item that you don't think you're going to eat more than one time. You know, maybe I just had this like one really rare, expensive can of abalone and premium oyster sauce, and I don't think I'll ever eat it again. So I'm just gonna simply log exactly what I'm eating right now. Another way that this could be really useful is that you're eating at like a restaurant, maybe like Chipotle or Cava, where you customized a burrito or a burrito bowl or a rice bowl or something like that. And you went onto the website and you did like the nutrition calculator, and for that exact bowl of food, you have calories, proteins, fats, carbs, and you just want to log that really easily without having to itemize every single thing that you put in there. So basically, after you hit that quick add button, you want to put in the calories, the proteins, fats, carbs, alcohols, and if you want to put in a name just for yourself, you can. So in the case of this, if I was just going to have one single serving of this abalone, I would put in the 40 calories, 5 protein, carbs is 5, and fats are 0. And I can log that food pretty easily. Let's see, and it's just a quick add in my food log because I didn't put a name in. But yeah, super simple, super easy. I would probably say that if you're gonna add in like a Chipotle burrito bowl, and it's the same one you eat all the time, you might wanna take the time to put in like a new recipe or something like that so that you can add it in multiple times. The last thing when it comes to like actually logging in the nutrition information that does work with this particular item is scanning the item and finding that what is logged is not accurate. When I put in the amount of grams per serving, I'm getting something that's wildly different than what's on the nutrition label. So the nutrition label says 40 calories for 110 grams, and the log that's in here is saying 55 and 8.8 protein, 6.6 carbs. So that's just straight wrong. Sorry, I scanned it, and then I'm gonna hit this button underneath the calories that says to custom, and then I'm going to edit all of this information. For myself, I'm pretty accurate about these kind of things, so honestly, I would change the food name and the brand. This is Lee Kum Kee brand, it's not Taiwan brand. And then serving size, calories, and macros. I would fix all of that, and then I would create an ad for myself. And if you scan the same item again in the future, the item that you corrected or that you logged is going to be the one that shows up for you. So that's one nice thing about that. So there you go. 3 instances of having to input your own calories and macros. The last thing I want to quickly mention about tracking and logging your food is how to use a food scale. So we already kind of briefly went over like turning it on and putting an item on the scale and getting a weight. But this is something, honestly, it's genius. I don't know why I didn't know this earlier, but aside from putting an item on the scale and measuring how much it weighs, you can also subtract from the weight on the scale to get an accurate measurement of what you're eating. So in that case, and this is something I do all the time, usually the use case for this is when you have a jar of something. It could be peanut butter, it could be cottage cheese, it could be salsa, but basically you have your item on the scale full to the extent that it is, and you zero out the scale, and then you take your scooping implement and then you would just remove the food that way. So you can see it's now -7 grams. So I would log myself for 7 grams of peanut butter. Definitely use this method for these types of items if you are tracking your calories. Okay, and also while we're on the subject of like macro tracking apps, I just want to give you like a really quick lowdown of my pros and cons for using MacroFactor in particular. Pros for me are the algorithm and goal setting. Major, biggest feature that I love about MacroFactor is the customizability of setting goals, which you kind of saw when I was doing my goal setting at the beginning of the video. And I love that it updates every week. I love that I can decline the program if I don't like it, but usually I choose to go with it. And I've also found that the algorithm is pretty accurate for me in my experience. The caveat to that being my tracking is pretty accurate, and I'm pretty consistent, and I also weigh myself every single day. But the algorithm has been really good for me, and I love that it takes away some of that mental stress of having to calculate my own macros. Another thing that I really like about the app is that the interface in general is just really customizable. So I can add things in that I like, and I can remove things that I don't like. If I wanted to keep track of my sodium, I could add that. I have it integrated with my Fitbit app, and I can track my steps in MacroFactor as well. The weight trends, the daily weigh-ins, like anything that's available in the app, you can add or remove it from your interface, which is really nice. Keeps it as uncluttered as possible. And then building on that, I love that the app is neutral, like no visual indication in a negative way for like missing a day or going over your calories or not hitting your macros or not doing a weigh-in. It's simply and straightforward, just tells you all the information without shaming you. Those are my 3 biggest pros for using MacroFactor. The cons being that it's a paid app and the logging and listings aren't always as accurate as I would love, and that I'm having to scan a lot of the items that I eat. So basically, I paid $70 to $80 for an entire year of using this app. I thought the price was worth it, but if you are not willing to pay or you can't pay for an app like this, there's really no reason to use the app. I think all the features are behind a paywall. In general, I have had a good experience using it, and I think that it was worth what I paid for. Mafiq, what are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Mafiq? Hello? Let's talk about the workouts, how they're feeling, how they're going. Overall, I'm really happy with how the workouts have been going and how I've been feeling. Personally, I think I've kept the intensity of the workouts pretty good, high enough that I'm getting in a good amount of work, but also not enough to leave me feeling like really messed up. I also think that my body is starting to adjust to working out again. I've mentioned it before, but I basically took off most of December, so I'm coming back into it. And when I started working out again, I was feeling really, really sore all of the time. In the first week of the fat loss phase, I was feeling kind of sore. There were days when I had like really, really bad DOMs, especially in my hamstrings and my chest. But as of this past week, I think I've pretty much adjusted. I do get a little bit sore every once in a while here and there, but overall, I'm feeling like pretty okay. I do get a little fatigued, but it's nothing that is like maiming me, which is great. I love that. Delayed onset muscle soreness is not really the best indication of like how much work you've put into a workout. You know, it is nice to feel like you have done something, but over time, your body gets used to working out, especially if you're really consistent with it and have like pretty much the same intensity throughout the workout. Overall, I would also say that I'm enjoying this program that I've made for myself. I kind of specifically made it for this fat loss phase because I wanted something different, and I wanted something that fit nicely into a 7-day week. Having like the 5 workout days that's the same week to week is really nice for me and my mental health, I think. I used to be on a rolling workout schedule, and it was just like a little bit awkward to track and log and just like keep up with in general. But you know, every Wednesday for me now is a lower body day. Every Thursday is a shoulder and arms day, and that works out really nicely. I'll also say like, I used to be trying to grow my lower body, and lower body exercises tend to be like extra taxing because a lot of the time you're not just using your lower body, it's more of a full body exercise. But I switched up my programming, so now it's upper, lower, shoulders and arms, and then upper, lower. So it's more emphasis on upper body and thus slightly less taxing. This probably isn't an ideal workout schedule for everybody, and it's certainly not ideal if I'm wanting to focus on my lower body, but I personally find upper body workouts more enjoyable, and that's another reason why I added the shoulders and arms day in. Not only is it less taxing, but you know, it's kind of a workout that I look forward to. I enjoy, for the most part, like working my shoulders and my arms, like my glamour muscles, so that's been nice. So yeah, overall, pretty happy with the workouts in general, and I have no injuries to report. Currently, right now, I have no muscle soreness, which is nice. And, you know, when you're in a calorie deficit, you're not fueling your body. to an extent that you're really going to be growing too much muscle, but you also have to be much more careful with your workouts because you're more likely to get injured. And if you do get injured, it's going to be harder for you to recover. So with that in mind, although I am pushing myself during the workouts, I'm not going crazy. You know, I'm controlling the weights. I'm just trying to be really careful and methodical with my workouts in general, keeping all that in mind. I'm always striving for mini PRs. Like, I'm trying to push the weight a little bit. I'm trying to go for one more rep. I'm training close to failure, but in a way that is safe. And I'm really, really happy to maintain my strength where possible. But I'm also being kind to myself if I lose a little bit of strength in a calorie deficit fat loss phase, because that's kind of just like a thing that naturally happens when you're not eating a lot of calories. So yeah, overall, happy with how the workouts have been feeling. And I hope this is a trend going forward because it feels good. In terms of food, I've actually had like a really good couple weeks of like food intake. The food has been tasty, it's been macro friendly, it's been high protein. I don't feel like I'm hungry all the time. I'm doing a really good job of cooking and piecing together meals that are satiating, but not a ton of calories, if that makes sense. So in week 1, my averages were 1,559 calories a day, 152 grams of protein, 39 fat, and 151 carbs. I was over my protein goal, but under my fats, which is okay. I don't think I'm getting into the dangerous zone. And in terms of like my averages compared to my goals at the time, they were pretty spot on. I was a little bit under in calories, but better to be under than over when you're in a fat loss phase. Week 2, I was down to an average of 1,492 calories a day, 152 grams of protein, 41 fat, and 141 carbs. So I was able to get my fat intake up a little bit. Protein was pretty straight across the board, and I was in line with my MacroFactor calorie and macro goals. So that was pretty good for me. And like, I was just really consistent with logging, really consistent with hitting my goals or being slightly under. And I was just really happy with how I felt throughout the week. Like I said, not hungry, not starving, and just eating good food in general. And I'm sure you can see like from the pictures that I put on the screen that like the food looks pretty good. It's tasty. In terms of like caffeine intake and diet soda intake, I've been doing exactly what I said I wanted to do. I'll have my coffee in the morning, and in the afternoon I'll have tea or a diet soda that also contains caffeine, and I haven't really deviated from that very much. I think there was maybe one day where I had a caffeinated soda in the morning and then slightly less coffee kind of like mid-morning, and then another soda in the afternoon, but I was still within my like personally prescribed 3 soda limit. And I've been feeling pretty good. There are times when I am getting tired, but I think that's more due to bad sleep than because of caffeine, lack of caffeine, or the nutrients I'm eating. But I mean, my lack of sleep is pretty spot on for how I normally sleep, so I'm not really that worried about it. But yeah, overall, just like really happy with how well I'm doing with the dieting portion of this fat loss phase. I have already checked what my strategy for the coming week is, and my calories did get lowered, even though I have been really consistent with my intake. But you know, it is what it is. My total daily energy expenditure, TDEE, has been trending downwards a little bit. So what that means is that over time, I'm not expending as much energy on a daily basis. So that total daily energy expenditure comes from workouts, just walking around, existing, sleeping, chewing. It's basically how many calories I burn overall in a day. And I'm not super happy that that's going down over time. Ideally, it would be staying the same. But, you know, when you're in a calorie deficit, a lot of times you will just unconsciously move less because your body is tired. And that's probably what's going on here right now, because my step count has been pretty consistent and my workouts have been pretty consistent. So it makes sense to me that I'm probably fidgeting a little bit less. You know, maybe I'm chilling out at night more than I was the week before in the past month or so. So my total daily energy expenditure, like I said, has been going down, and I might have to compensate for that later on in the fat loss phase by increasing my energy expenditure, my activity level, like consciously, by adding in cardio or tracking my steps and making sure I get a certain number of steps a day, something like that. So we'll see how that progresses. In terms of my weight trend, it has been trending down, but not at the rate that it should be to reach my goal. So that's another reason why my calorie and macro goals have gone down in the past 2 weeks. It's because I'm not reaching that 0.8 pounds a week goal, but it is in general trending down. And one of the reasons I would say that it hasn't been going down as fast as it should is, you know, it just takes time for the body to adjust to being in a calorie deficit. You know, it's probably, it might do this thing where it's kind of like, and then drops pretty suddenly, but we'll see. So early in the fat loss phase, I'm really not that worried about it. So we'll just see how things play out, and hopefully my weight trend starts to lower at an accelerated rate, we'll say. Yeah, and then last but not least, in terms of like the recap of the last 2 weeks, how I'm feeling mentally and just overall, I'm feeling pretty okay, all things considered. Setting myself up for success with all that planning, having like the eating strategy, having the weekly meal plan, and having my workouts all scheduled out for like literally 16 weeks has been so nice for my mental health. It's just a lot of stuff that I don't really have to think about. And yeah, it's just like when something is scheduled and ready to go, I find that I have pretty good adherence. I start to like procrastinate on stuff when there's a lot of like extra steps. You know, if I have to plan my workout for the day, it's an extra step that's gonna keep me from doing something. If I have to like plan out my whole meal for the day in the morning, you know, from start to finish, you know, that's another step in the process that like keeps me from getting things done. So having like all this stuff set up in advance has just been like so helpful for me, and I really appreciate my past self for doing that. One thing I have noticed though about myself is that I've been getting a little irritable in between meals. If there's like a long break, that's another reason why I prefer to have like food throughout the day rather than intermittent fasting, because I know that I get irritable with long breaks between food. But there were a couple times this week where there was a longer than expected amount of time between meals, and I was definitely getting like pretty irritable. And I did my best to like keep it in check, not take it out on other people, but it was something that I did notice. I don't necessarily think that my irritability was unreasonable. It wasn't necessary for me to have this like really long break. It was just like a circumstance. But yeah, even though it's something that I noticed, I tried to like keep it mostly in check. So something for me to look out for going forward is that if I foresee a time when there might be a long period of no eating, maybe I need to shuffle around my intake so that I'm having more food throughout the day rather than like separate meals. Just something for me to keep in mind. So yeah, overall, I mean, it's just the first 2 weeks of this fat loss phase, but I'm feeling pretty good in general, mentally, physically, and about how things are going. Obviously, I mentioned that the weight trend down is not going as quickly as I would have liked, but it is what it is, and MacroFactor is gonna adjust my strategy based on what's going on with my weight. So now that that recap is over, we're gonna do like a little side-by-side of the physique check-ins. I'm looking at these like physique check-ins, and straight up, I'm not really seeing much of a visual difference. I mean, it's only been 2 weeks. At the beginning of week 1, I weighed in at 154.9 pounds, and today, which is Monday, 2 weeks later, I am 153.4 this morning. So just the number on the scale. It really doesn't tell you a whole lot, but the picture on the screen, I think, you know, and let me know in the comments if you're seeing differently. But yeah, I'm just not seeing a ton of visual difference, which is not unexpected. The only thing, maybe, if I was like being really critical, and you know, it could also just be chalked up to slightly different lighting, slightly different positioning, slightly different closer or farther away from the camera, but maybe there's just like a tiny difference in my waist. Maybe my waist is just looking a little smaller, but other than that, I'm honestly not seeing much of anything, and frankly, I'm not surprised. So let me know what you think. And with that, let's wrap it up. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I hope you'll continue to stick with me through this fat loss phase and for the rest of the series. In the next video, in addition to doing my check-ins, I will walk you through an entire week of my workouts where I go more in depth to the exercises and why I do them, and about my programming in general. That video should come out in about 2 weeks. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, leave them in the comment section of this video and I will get back to any questions in the next one. And if you're new here, please consider subscribing and maybe turning on notifications if you don't want to miss anything. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if you didn't like the video, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!